Gobo, are you awake? Gobo opened one eye sleepily. There was an eye staring back at him. Gobo opened the other eye. There was another eye staring back at him, and a warm, furry nose was pressed against his own warm, furry nose. Oh, good, said Wembley. You're awake. I was afraid you'd miss all the fun. So, do you think that Gobo was awake before Wembley asked him if he was awake? I'm thinking not. That's sort of like what it's like to be a parent in the middle of the night when your child comes in and wakes you up and says, I'm having trouble sleeping. What fun. Gobo yawned and looked around the cozy cave he shared with Wembley. It's the middle of the night. Go back to sleep, Wembley. With a sigh, Wembley climbed up the ladder and got into his bed. So there's Gobo telling Wembley to go back to sleep. And there's Wembley climbing back up. And he doesn't look very tired at all. We can see from his eyes that he seems wide awake. Wembley couldn't sleep. For 3 nights in a row, he tossed and turned and worried about what everyone else in Fraggle Rock was doing. I'll bet they're having a good time, he thought. They just never wake up to tell me. So we can see how there he is, what he's thinking about. He curled up on his right side, but the bed felt hot. He rolled onto his left side and found a lumpy spot. Lying on his tummy felt crummy, so he stretched out on his back. Gobo, how can you sleep? Wembley whispered from his bed. Don't you ever worry about all the fun you're missing? So it seems like maybe Gobo is resting just fine, and Wembley's brain is kind of just thinking and thinking and thinking. When there was no answer, Wembley whispered a little louder. Gobo, do you hear that click-tock, click-tock noise? Doozer boots, murmured Gobo. I told you last night, Wembley. It's just the sound of doozer boots marching along the rocky ledges. Oh, now I remember, said Wembley. He scrambled down the ladder and stood beside Gobo's bed. Maybe the doozers are tired, he said. Do you think they'd like a helping hand? Gobo groaned. I told you the night before last, Wembley. Doozers don't get tired, but Fraggles do. So here's a picture, boys and girls, of the doozers. And the doozers are, when you watch the Fraggles, the doozers are these little working people, and I say people, creatures, monsters, I guess, if you will. And they work and work and work all the time, and they never get tired. But the Fraggles are in their cave, and they do get tired. The Fraggles are sort of like people, like they sleep at night. So we can see how Gobo is definitely wishing that he was sleeping again, and Wembley doesn't look very tired at all. Oh, said Wembley with a sigh. Suddenly he smiled and he snapped his fingers. Then Boober must be tired, he said. I'll go help him do the laundry right now. Gobo sat up. Wembley, oh, he said. By the time he'd finished yawning, Wembley was gone. Gobo rubbed his eyes with his fists, and then he stretched and sighed and scratched his head. Then he fell over backward, right into his bed. So is he going to chase after Wembley after all? Doesn't look like it. There goes Wembley. Are you going for a trip with your uncle traveling Matt? Red asked when she... Whoop, did we miss a page? Nope. When she and Moki saw Gobo the next morning. No, said Gobo, yawning. Why do you ask? Red giggled. Because the bags under your eyes look like they're packed. So has anyone ever have you heard of bags under your eyes? So when you're really, really tired and you don't have sleep, your eyes get swollen and they look like they're bags underneath. And if they're really swollen, they just look really yucky. So Gobo says, I wish I could pack my bags. I haven't gotten a full night's sleep since Wembley started staying awake all night. So there he is telling them about it. And see how they're in a cave? You could sort of see that they're underground. Wembley Then it really was him, Moki exclaimed. The night before last, he woke us to ask us if we'd like to go for a midnight swim. I thought I was dreaming, said Red. You, grumbled Boober, joining them at the Fraggle pond. He banged on my door last night. Boober, what's wrong with your hat? Moki asked. Boober's old brown cap had taken on an odd new shape. My hat is fine, but my head is not. Boober lifted his cap to reveal a great big lump on his head. It's all Wembley's fault, he said. Wembley hit you on the head? Gasped Red. So see, here's Wembley's head, and look at that bump. Not good. I'm sorry, it's not Wembley's head. It's Boober's head. And so we don't know something. We know that Wembley stopped by. He knocked on the door. And we know that somehow Boober's head got a bump. So I think we're about to learn something. Oh, no. No, no, Boober exclaimed. When Wembley woke me, I hurried to answer the door in the dark, and I slipped on some spilled souffle. So look what happened. Poor Boober, said Moki. Poor all of us, said Red. We've got to keep Wembley from staying awake all night. And keeping everyone else awake, too, added Boober. So they're all going to try to problem solve to figure out why can't Wembley sleep. Perhaps he's afraid of the dark, Moki suggested. Boober disagreed. Poor nutrition, he said. Too many Moss burgers before bedtime. Or it could be a lack of vitamin F. He doesn't get enough exercise, declared Red. If he did, he'd be too tired to do anything but sleep. It's because he can't make decisions, Gobo decided. If Wembley just put his mind to it, he could sleep the whole night through. We must try to help him, said Moki. Good idea, said Boober. Let's do it later. After I've had a nap. So it looks like they're all trying to problem solve to help their friend. It was nearly nighttime when the Fraggle friends arrived at Wembley's cave. What a nice surprise, he said. Now we can have a party. All we need are chips and dips and doozer sticks. Just as I suspected. Boober shook his head. No wonder you can't sleep, Wembley. Everyone knows that chips and dips and doozer sticks before bedtime can keep you awake for hours. Boober pulled a jar of purpleberry juice from his knapsack. 2 sips of this, he said, and you'll be fast asleep in no time. Nothing to be afraid of, Wembley. Just watch me. Boober drank 2 great gulps of purpleberry juice. Then he yawned and stretched and sighed and said, See? Wembley had to agree. Boober did look very sleepy. So there he goes. I've got an idea that's much more fun, said Red. You run up and down the ladder to your bed, and you wiggle your nose every time you climb up and touch your toes every time you climb down. Here, watch me. I'll show you what I mean. Up the ladder, Red scampered. Okay, so we can see the picture. Up the ladder, Red scampered. At the top, she wiggled her nose. Then down she came and touched her toes. Then up again and down. And then Red yawned and stretched and sighed and said, You see, I'm already sleepy. Maybe Red has the method. I find nothing as soothing for sleep as a little night music, said Moki. So this afternoon at Inspiration Cave, I composed a lullaby especially for you, Wembley. When I sing it, you will relax completely. You will close your weary eyes and rest. And you will think the words and music are fabulous. Moki started to sing her brand new lullaby. It began, Go to sleep, sweet Wembley. Take a load off your feet. By the time she got to the part where it said, All your friends want to do is get some sleep too, Moki's eyes were closed. You see, she whispered. Then she yawned and stretched. Oh, there's nothing like a lullaby to put a Fraggle to sleep. The thing is, as I look at the illustrations, do you notice something about the Fraggles that are helping him? And then do you notice Wembley? Does he look tired? But they sure do. Each one of them is sharing their tidbits for how they fall asleep. They all are getting tired, but not Wembley. Wembley looked around. Boober and Red and Moki are nearly fast asleep, he whispered to Gobo. They're going to miss all the fun. What fun? Asked Gobo. Why, all the fun that goes on in Fraggle Rock at night, Wembley explained. Is that why you've been staying awake all night? Gobo asked. Wembley, every Fraggle in Fraggle Rock goes to sleep at night. Everyone? Asked Wembley. Everyone but you, Gobo sighed. So look at everybody looks tired. So it seems like maybe Wembley is thinking that everyone else is up. I guess I can go to sleep then, Wembley said, if I still remember how. It's easy, Wembley, said Gobo. All it really takes is a simple decision. You say to yourself, Self, it's bedtime. It's boring. There's nothing to do now. I think I'll go to sleep. Then you close your eyes. Watch me. I'll show you how to do it. So there's Gobo. He's going to get himself settled. Gobo climbed into his bed. He closed his eyes. He said to himself, Self, it's bedtime. It's boring. The next thing Wembley knew, Gobo was snoring. For 3 nights in a row, Wembley had wondered what he was missing when he slept. He'd been sure all his friends were wide awake and having fun all without him. Now he knew. He wasn't missing anything. All his best friends went to sleep too. Except for Gobo snoring and the click-tock of Doozer boots marching along the rocky ledges, the night seemed very still, and the cave seemed very cozy. Wembley took 2 sips of Boober's purple berry juice. Then he climbed up and down his ladder just as Red had shown him. Then he hummed a few lines of the lullaby Moki had written especially for him. And finally, surrounded by his sleeping friends, he crawled happily into his bed and closed his eyes. Self, it's bedtime, Wembley said, and it really is boring being awake when your best friends are asleep. There's no fun to miss. There's nothing to do, so thanks and good night. To Boober and Red and Moki and Gobo and Wembley, he added, good night to you too. And so that was the end of why Wembley Fraggle couldn't sleep. And one of the reasons I chose this book is because it kind of touches on a theme for us. And my daughter, Taryn, calls it FOMO. Have you ever heard of that? It's an abbreviation, FOMO, which stands for fear of missing out. And so I think that's what Wembley Fraggle was suffering from, fear of missing out. He was so worried he was going to miss something that he couldn't sleep. And so sometimes we're afraid we're going to miss something. Maybe if friends are getting together without us, or maybe if we feel tired and we don't want to go to bed, but we're afraid we're going to miss something. That's called fear of missing out. And really, the only thing we're missing out on is probably some sleep or relaxing at home instead of going somewhere with our friends. So it's okay to miss out sometimes. And sometimes our mind plays tricks on us that we're thinking we're missing out on something. And in Wembley's case, he wasn't missing out on anything. Everyone else was sleeping. The only thing he was missing was sleep. So sometimes we have to talk ourselves through feelings like like you're missing out on something. So I hope you enjoyed tonight's story and Wembley and the Fraggles. And remember, this is the character, all these are the characters that Mrs. Quinn grew up with. So I hope you enjoyed them. And I hope you are all well. Bailey, it was great to see you on here. I hope if anyone else watches later on, they will get to enjoy our story as well. Good night, Bailey. I miss you. Mwah. And I miss all of you. And I will see you next week for next week's Read Aloud. Miss you all. Good night. Mwah.